A boy drank 2 liters of soda in 30 minutes. And this is what happened to his kidneys. Joseph was a typical teenager, full of energy and a sense of invincibility that often accompanies youth. At 15, he was known among his friends as the one who never backed down from a challenge. Whether it was acing a test without studying or staying up all night playing video games, Joseph always seemed to find a way to come out on top. However, this time the stakes were different. On a warm summer afternoon, while scrolling through his favorite social media platform, Joseph came across a challenge that piqued his interest. The Soda Slam was the latest viral sensation, urging participants to consume 2 liters of soda in just 30 minutes. It seemed simple enough, a trivial task that promised internet fame and the admiration of his peers. Without hesitation, Joseph decided to take it on, unaware of the storm that was about to be unleashed on his young body. With a confident smile, Joseph set up his phone to record the event. The timer was set, and with a deep breath, he took his first gulp. The sugary liquid rushed down his throat, and the carbonation bubbled in his stomach, but he didn't mind. The first liter went down smoothly, almost too smoothly, and Joseph felt a surge of pride. He was halfway through, and the challenge was still under control, or so he thought. As he started the second liter, the first signs of discomfort began to appear. His stomach, now stretched beyond its normal capacity, started to protest. But Joseph pushed through, determined to complete the challenge. By the time the last drop of soda disappeared into his mouth, a wave of nausea hit him, and he felt a sharp pain radiating from his abdomen. Yet, it was too late to stop now. The challenge was over, and Joseph had won. Or so he believed. The initial victory was short-lived. Within an hour, Joseph's condition rapidly deteriorated. The pain in his abdomen intensified, becoming a relentless, throbbing ache that left him doubled over. His skin, usually a healthy shade of olive, turned pale, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. His parents, alarmed by the sudden change in their usually energetic son, rushed him to the emergency room. As they recounted the events leading up to his condition, the medical staff quickly realized that this was not just a simple case of an upset stomach. Joseph was in serious trouble. The excessive consumption of soda in such a short period had triggered a cascade of reactions in his body, and his kidneys, unable to cope with the sudden influx of sugar and chemicals, were now in jeopardy. The race against time had begun, and Joseph's fate hung in the balance. As Joseph was wheeled into the emergency room, the gravity of the situation became apparent to everyone around him. The once vibrant and carefree teenager was now barely able to keep his eyes open, his breath shallow and labored. His parents clutched each other's hands, their faces etched with worry, as they followed closely behind the medical staff. The emergency team sprang into action, immediately assessing Joseph's condition. His vital signs were alarming. His heart was racing, his blood pressure was dangerously low, and his skin was clammy to the touch. The attending physician, Dr. Morgan, quickly ordered a series of tests, including blood work, a urinalysis, and imaging studies to determine the extent of the damage. As the tests were being conducted, Dr. Morgan began to piece together the likely cause of Joseph's sudden decline. The excessive intake of soda in such a short period had overloaded his kidneys, which were now struggling to filter out the massive amounts of sugar, caffeine, and phosphates. The strain on his renal system was compounded by the fact that Joseph had not consumed any significant amount of water alongside the soda, leading to severe dehydration. The situation was critical. If the kidneys failed completely, the toxins would rapidly accumulate in his bloodstream, leading to a life-threatening condition known as hyperkalemia, where dangerously high levels of potassium could cause his heart to stop. While the medical team worked tirelessly to stabilize Joseph, his parents were briefed on the seriousness of the situation. Dr. Morgan explained that Joseph was suffering from acute kidney injury, a condition that occurs when the kidneys are suddenly unable to filter waste products from the blood. This can happen due to a variety of reasons, but in Joseph's case, it was the result of a toxic overload. The next few hours would be crucial in determining whether Joseph's kidneys could recover with treatment or if he would require more drastic interventions, such as dialysis. The room was thick with tension, as everyone waited anxiously for the results of the tests and the next steps in Joseph's care. Joseph's test results began to trickle in. each one confirming Dr. Morgan's worst fears. His blood tests showed a severe electrolyte imbalance, with potassium and sodium levels far outside the normal range. His creatinine levels, a marker of kidney function, were dangerously elevated, indicating that his kidneys were not filtering waste as they should. The urinalysis revealed the presence of proteins and blood, both signs of acute kidney injury. The imaging study showed that Joseph's kidneys were swollen and inflamed, struggling under the pressure of trying to process the toxic load he had consumed. Dr. Morgan knew that they were dealing with a classic case of rhabdomyolysis, a condition where the breakdown of muscle tissue releases a protein called myoglobin into the bloodstream, which is toxic to the kidneys. To understand what was happening in Joseph's body, it's important to consider how the kidneys function under normal circumstances. The kidneys are responsible for filtering out waste products and excess substances from the blood, which are then excreted in the urine. They also help to maintain the balance of fluids, electrolytes, and acids in the body. However, when the kidneys are suddenly overwhelmed, as in Joseph's case, they can no longer perform these functions effectively. The soda Joseph consumed contained high levels of sugar and caffeine, both of which are diuretics that can lead to dehydration if not balanced with water intake. Additionally, the phosphates in the soda contributed to an electrolyte imbalance, further complicating the kidney's ability to function. As Dr. Morgan explained to Joseph's parents, the acute kidney injury was a direct result of the immense stress placed on Joseph's renal system. The combination of dehydration, hyperkalemia, and the presence of myoglobin in his bloodstream created a perfect storm that could easily lead to kidney failure if not addressed promptly. The immediate priority was to stabilize Joseph's electrolyte levels and support his kidney function through intravenous fluids and medications. However, the underlying damage to the kidneys meant that recovery would not be immediate, and there was still a significant risk that Joseph might need long-term treatment or even dialysis if his kidneys did not start to recover on their own. With the diagnosis clear, the focus shifted to Joseph's treatment and recovery. The medical team initiated aggressive fluid therapy to help flush out the toxins from his system and support his kidney function. Joseph was placed on a continuous intravenous drip, delivering a carefully balanced solution of electrolytes, glucose, and bicarbonate to counteract the effects of the soda. The goal was to stabilize his condition and prevent any further damage to his kidneys. Dr. Morgan also prescribed medications to protect his heart from the high potassium levels, which could cause dangerous arrhythmias if left unchecked. Joseph was closely monitored, with regular blood tests to track his progress. As the hours passed, the fluid therapy began to take effect. Joseph's blood pressure slowly improved, and his heart rate stabilized, though he remained in a fragile state. The medical team remained vigilant, knowing that the next 24 to 48 hours would be critical. The fluid therapy was working to reduce the levels of potassium in his blood, but the damage to his kidneys was still severe. Dr. Morgan consulted with a nephrologist, a kidney specialist, to discuss the possibility of dialysis if Joseph's kidneys did not show signs of recovery. Dialysis would act as an artificial replacement for kidney function, filtering waste and excess substances from Joseph's blood while his kidneys healed. Meanwhile, Joseph's parents remained by his side, their faces lined with exhaustion and worry. They were deeply shaken by how quickly a simple social media challenge had escalated into a life-threatening crisis. Dr. Morgan took the time to counsel them, explaining that while the situation was grave, there was still hope for Joseph's recovery. He emphasized the importance of patience and vigilance in the coming days as the treatment continued. Joseph's journey was far from over, and the road ahead would be challenging, but with the right care, there was a chance he could make a full recovery. As the first night in the ICU passed, Joseph's condition began to show slight signs of improvement. The relentless efforts of the medical team started to pay off, and the fluid therapy was helping to reduce the levels of toxins in his blood. His creatinine levels, though still elevated, were no longer rising, indicating that the kidneys might be responding to the treatment. The relief in the room was palpable, but no one dared to voice their hopes too soon. Joseph remained in a delicate state, and the risk of complications still loomed large. Dr. Morgan ordered a series of follow-up tests to monitor Joseph's progress, knowing that they were not yet out of the woods. Throughout the day, Joseph's parents continued their vigil at his bedside. They took turns holding his hand, speaking to him in soft voices, even though he remained unconscious. The beeping of the monitors and the quiet hum of the medical equipment became a constant background noise, a reminder of the fragile line between life and death. Dr. Morgan made frequent visits to check on Joseph, adjusting his treatment as necessary and providing updates to his parents. He remained cautiously optimistic, knowing that Joseph's young age and generally good health prior to the incident were working in his favor. The next crucial step was to see if Joseph's kidneys could regain enough function on their own, or if dialysis would become a necessity. By the end of the second day, the small improvements began to accumulate. Joseph's blood pressure stabilized further, and his heart rate returned to a more normal rhythm. His electrolyte levels, though still imbalanced, were moving in the right direction. The medical team continued to monitor him closely, ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. Dr. Morgan decided to hold off on dialysis for the moment, hoping that the kidneys would continue to recover with the current treatment. However, he warned Joseph's parents that the situation could change at any time, and they needed to be prepared for the possibility that more intensive interventions might still be required. For now, though, there was a glimmer of hope that Joseph might pull through without the need for dialysis. As the third day dawned, Joseph's condition took a significant turn. The morning blood tests revealed that his kidney function, while still impaired, had improved enough to suggest that they were starting to heal. His creatinine levels had decreased slightly, and the swelling in his abdomen had reduced. It was the news that everyone had been waiting for. Dr. Morgan felt a surge of cautious optimism. Joseph's body was fighting back. The decision to delay dialysis had paid off, but the road to recovery was still long and fraught with potential setbacks. The focus now shifted to supporting his body as it continued to heal and preventing any further complications. Dr. Morgan explained the situation to Joseph's parents, emphasizing that while the improvements were encouraging, Joseph was not yet out of danger. The next step was to gradually reduce the intensity of the intravenous fluids and see if Joseph's kidneys could maintain their function without the aggressive support they had been receiving. This would be a delicate balancing act. Reducing the fluids too quickly could cause a sudden spike in toxins, while maintaining them for too long could lead to fluid overload. It was a critical juncture in Joseph's treatment, and every decision had to be carefully weighed. The medical team continued their round-the-clock monitoring, adjusting the treatment plan as needed. The emotional toll on Joseph's parents was immense. They had watched their son go from a healthy, active teenager to a critically ill patient fighting for his life in just a matter of days. Now, as they sat by his bedside, they felt a mixture of hope and fear. Hope that Joseph was finally turning a corner, and fear that any small change could send him back into crisis. They found solace in Dr. Morgan's calm demeanor and his clear explanations of each step in the process. They trusted the medical team, but the uncertainty of the situation weighed heavily on them. All they could do was wait and hope that Joseph's recovery would continue on its positive trajectory. The following days saw a slow but steady improvement in Joseph's condition. His kidneys, though still weakened, began to function more effectively on their own. The medical team gradually tapered off the intravenous fluids, allowing Joseph's body to take over more of the workload. Each day, his blood tests showed incremental progress, electrolyte levels normalized, and his creatinine levels continued to decline. Joseph remained under close observation, but the atmosphere in the ICU shifted from one of crisis management to cautious recovery. Dr. Morgan remained vigilant, aware that any number of complications could still arise, but for the first time, he allowed himself to believe that Joseph might fully recover. As Joseph's condition stabilized, the medical team began to reduce some of the more intensive monitoring and treatments. Joseph was slowly weaned off the medications that had been protecting his heart from the high potassium levels, and the fluid intake was further reduced. The swelling in his abdomen decreased, and he began to regain some color in his face. Though still weak and confined to his bed, Joseph showed signs of waking from the fog of unconsciousness. His parents, who had remained at his side throughout the ordeal, were finally able to see glimpses of the son they knew. His eyelids fluttered, and his fingers twitched as he began to stir. The day Joseph finally opened his eyes was a moment of overwhelming relief. For for everyone involved. His parents wept with joy, and Dr. Morgan allowed himself a rare smile. Joseph was disoriented and weak, but he was alive and on the path to recovery. Dr. Morgan explained to him, in simple terms, what had happened and why he had been so sick. It was a lot for Joseph to take in, but he listened intently, the seriousness of the situation slowly dawning on him. There was still a long way to go, and Joseph would need extensive follow-up care and monitoring, but the worst was behind him. The battle for his life had been won, and now the focus shifted to rebuilding his strength and ensuring that he never faced such a crisis again. I want to remind you not to forget to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to bring you these important and inspiring stories. And don't miss out on the next chapter of our journey. Just click on the video appearing on your screen to watch the next story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.